Hi, I'm Katie, and I designed neuroaffective somatics as a framework to provide bridges between concept and practice. I've been using Chinese medicine as a bridge in thought and practice for decades, decades and decades. When the pandemic hit, I got diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and I had to do almost all of it by myself because of the timing with the pandemic. And that gave me the perfect crucible to test all of this. So, what I'm sharing here are the simple practices, ideas, and some of the myth that helped me get through. And I hope it helps you too. So, the chart that you're looking at is called the Neijing Tu, and it is often translated as the inner landscape. The translation I prefer is the inner warp, and the warp being the material that you would weave through or do your needlepoint through. So it's the warp is the netting that holds it all together. In the cosmology that informs Chinese medicine, the body is seen as a microcosm of the whole universe. So just as we might look up at the stars and contemplate our relationship to that kind of infinity, we might contemplate the constellations within, constellations of our lived experience, constellations of our lineage, of our ancestors, and constellations of the humans that we're in relationship with all the time. This chart also is used by acupuncturists, by medical doctors to treat actual medical conditions. That is not what we're doing in neuroaffective somatics. I am not a medical doctor. So we're going to stay within a scope of practice and use the Neijing Tu as a map of metaphor. And that's going to help the lived experience and the communication from humans who are neurodivergent, traumatized, experiencing chronic pain, to those who are trying to help us. And I am one of both sides of that coin, actually. It is fascinating how what a person anticipates a lived experience to be can be so out of sync with what it is. If you've ever had the experience of going to the doctor with a problem and getting a test, and then the doctor says, well, your tests are okay. Why are you still feeling that way? Everything says that you're okay. This chart is a way to contemplate what that means, though, for you personally. As it relates to the practice of somatics and neuroaffective somatics particularly, neuroaffective somatics is the framework I've designed. What this does is it acts as a bridge between current medical parlance and rhetoric, particularly around trauma, and actually doing it. What do we do? Right? So there's the idea, I need to regulate my nervous system, and then, well, how do I do it? This is about the doing. And so what I've done with the framework is I am leveraging everything that's already existing in the literature. This is all open source of Chinese medicine. And then using my business process engineering, linguistics, and software design self to help us cognitively bridge. And we can do it with this chart, this navigation system, because it itself is that. It's showing our nervous system. It's showing reproduction. I cannot wait to tell you more. Let's go. The monk who identified and took the rubbing of this speaks to how precise this painting is, and also how it assisted him in mapping his experience of the golden elixir. You can see here it says, if you are able to understand the great Tao of the golden elixir, you have already understood so much. I dared not keep it to myself. This is open source. Okay, it is not easy to access because it hasn't been appropriated and colonized like the Vedic teachings from India, but it is open source. And it is this, all of this is meant for our benefit and to bring humanity into homeostasis, into balanced relationship. Do I believe I can do that on my own? No. Do I like the idea? Yeah. And all this chart says, this monk who is the expert, right, who did the rubbing, he says all we have to do is breathe. It's the inhale and the exhale. But we're breathing with purpose. The intent that one breathes with in this system is emotional alchemy. It is transforming inner lead into gold. It's what the current thinking you would call, what is it? Emotional regulation, or like nervous system regulation. Let's make it art. Look at this art. It's amazing. Here we are at the head, the very, very top of the bean, the top of the man. And I'd like you to just take a moment and contemplate. Just look. You don't even have to be looking for. Just check it out. And maybe write down what you see. And if you start having awarenesses or anything as I'm discussing this, please continue to write them down. But I do want to start at the very top. You see there's a little hole above the mountains. That is a grain of millet. And the translation says, in a grain of millet, an entire lifetime. So this is encouraging us to remember that the best ideas require time. We also see a mountain range of 9 peaks. And this implies and shows both that success in this system equals longevity. You get to age. That's what success is. It's aging. This wise old man here is Lao Tzu, and he is attributed to have been the author of the Tao Te Ching, which translates as the Book of Changes. I'm very smoothly looking to see if I have a copy right next to me that I can show you. I do not, so we'll just smoothly put that back in. But the Book of Changes, the only constant in the universe is change. The thing is that Lao Tzu represents the balance between everything that's possible and what's reasonable. And the reason that Lao Tzu symbolizes here is the reason of continuation, the reason of governance, not of domination. Lao Tzu has a little hole. You can see a little circle underneath the wise old man. That is the moon. So it is located at the hard palate, and that's where we latch on as babies. So if you have ever seen a baby nurse or have nursed a baby or nursed yourself, you have a connection to moon. And when you place the tip of your tongue there, that completes a circuit called the microcosmic orbit that we'll discuss in time as we get actually into the body. But I just want to show you the map. If you take a line from the moon and you see how there's another line, that is the sun. That circle, that's your pineal gland. So, and I also want you to notice that the moon is forward in the face to the sun, which is back. There's a lot of seeming opposite placements of what you think might be more obvious or less obvious. I didn't make it up. I'm just reporting. I think that's interesting. I was raised in a culture that would put the most important, the growth, the whatever, the sun first, not the moon. The kid reaching up like this, that's Buddha. That's Buddha reaching up for nirvana. And so Taoism and Buddhism have a very, very strong connection historically as it relates to the human and continuing the species. What this symbolizes to my mind is our vision is amazing and wonderful. Let's make sure that it's actually doable. That's incredible. That's amazing. Let's make sure that everybody is getting fed. Okay. And then also, if you're familiar with Carl Jung and the concept of shadow, the wise old man and the Buddha here are also, we could look at them as Po and Hun, the corporeal and visionary soul, because they're placed in the mind, they're placed in the head, and it's governing and possibility, all that. We haven't even gotten to the pagoda. How could you not want to hang out here with me? And here we are in the heart space. I pulled a image of the 5 elements of Chinese medicine with a little bit of a description of them, because if we were to place the idea of emotional alchemy on the map, right, like in metaphor, it would be located in our heart space. This is where. And in the chart, look at this. This is a baby fishing for it. He has coins, but it looks like the Big Dipper. And he's standing on a galaxy bridge to this pagoda that I was referencing in the head video, right? It's a bridge to vision and reason, our heart space. This is also the location of fire. There's a fire element here, very much so. And in the magical medicine, the mystical medicine, there is a concept called Shen. And Shen has to do with the spirit or the mind of. So if you think about like the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, Shen in Chinese medicine is the spirit. As it relates to your organs themselves, the Shen of your organs, the main Shen of your organs is in your heart. That's the fire that keeps us alive. And so we want to have a balanced relationship with that. And these elements, when we start working with them conceptually, literally, through art, all of these elements, in my experience, create pathways for unique experiences and unique ways of understanding the world. Some people might understand the world more through food. I understand it through color and symbol. What if we were in a similar enough universe that we could be communicating with each other from actually how we are? Because this is a system. It's not a formula. This is a system. This is incredible. Hi. This is my cat having a meltdown. I'll be right back. I have placed here a graphic showing my interpretation of the 5 spirits of our major organs. And I want you to associate that with the heart space, even though it's to our actual organs. I just want you to associate it here. I want you to associate it with the social aspect of biopsychosocial. Okay, not regulating, homeostasis and connection. Let's meet the 5 characters. The one at the top is Shen, I was mentioning in the last video, and that is the spirit of our heart, the actual organ beating in your lungs. This relates to the concept of emperor. It relates to the concept of that wise old man. And the heart Shen is a manifestation of our awareness. The emotions associated are joy and love and hate. If we go counterclockwise over to Hun, you can see Hun relates to our liver. And Hun is one of the characters that Carl Jung did bring with him when he was introduced to this whole system. He's one of the 2. Hun has to do with our ethereal soul and is related to more of the emotional and spiritual aspects of life. The element that Hun is related to or correlates with is wood, growth. Across from Hun is kidneys. And this has to do with our will or willpower. If you are familiar with trauma conversations about mobilization, the need to mobilize if we're experiencing a freeze state, in Chinese medicine, that would be speaking to Ji. Okay? But here I want you to stay with me on this, okay? These Shen, these spirits, as an idea, they only exist. All they do is balance. We don't have to do anything for them to do what they do. We just, in this way of relating, the Shen become a bridge between literal and figurative, metaphor and model. So the kidneys have to do with shock and calm. Our lungs are underneath the kidneys here. You can see kind of down, looks like it has a little bit of a cigarette smoking. That is Po. And that's the other two of the two characters that Carl Jung brought with him from Chinese magical medicine. Po is related to the metal element, and I believe one of the most empowering Shen for any human to develop a relationship with, because metal is present in Chinese medicine in the alchemy, and metal is not present in many other alchemical systems. I'm not saying that other alchemical systems aren't good or whatever. I'm just saying we don't need anything in order to begin. Fully self-contained. Po also releases grief and brings in courage. And then the last one here you see is the spleen. Oh my goodness, this is earth element. This is related to worry and trust. And we place the idea of emotional alchemy in this heart space because of how that child's position in the map is translated. There's one of the translations of this section of the chart speaks to the success of humanity is based on how the earth element is in the heart space. Do I understand what that means completely? No, hello. But am I going to understand that Earth isn't just me and it's not just my body, it's also the planet? Yeah. And then am I going to go, oh, wow, fascinating how a child is also connected to commerce with the coins, constellations. There's my lineage, but isn't necessary because it's just on a bridge. So, we could just do things. I mean, so much to contemplate. This is a tool for contemplation and genuinely for real. For many of us, it becomes a tool for self-awareness and communicating. We need a way to communicate if we're divergent. Here is one way. And here we are at the base, at the seat. Lots going on here. So let's just take a moment and take it in. You can see where there's two children on a carriage of some sort. There is a fellow with an ox going into space. Heck, if we know, let's just take it in. There is a whole landing with a woman on it weaving. Now, this is from China. That tells us a lot. Weaving is very, 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 very important in Chinese history, of course, the Silk Road, but also the weaving of reality, right? The weaving of generations. Her spear is pointed in a way that it can disrupt the flow of the child on the bridge. She has a connection through her thread. You can see through her thread, she's connected to the head. She is connected. The gut biome, this whole concept of a gut biome, look at this. Here's a whole pastoral scene, a pastoral setting. That one area where you see the four yin and yang kind of in the little zone, that is our hara, or our main dantian, the primary energy center of this system. And it is envisioned as space. I'm trying to be all clever and sweet and, whatever, again, but we're just doing this the way it happens. So let's pretend that this is my dantian. In this system, those four yin and yang are part of this. So it's an idea of space in the body. I was referencing the golden elixir in a previous slide. The golden elixir, this is where we cultivate it. This is the location where we cultivate it. This, by the way, turns into a phenomena called alchemical pregnancy and birth, which is a fascinating experience, and also came about historically because the men saw what was happening with certain kinds of reproductive parts and understood how potentially like against entropy birth is. We are just taking a cycle and making a whole new being. And so historically, the golden elixir is a way to tap into this inherent quality, the inherent quality of generation, which has to do with babies. Why did Jung not bring it all over? You probably have as good an idea as I.